Earlier today, around 12 hours ago, vSphere 6.7 was announced. A few hours later, the downloads became available. And those downloaded bits, right here, the appliance and the ESXi hypervisor, I already took care of grabbing those. My article comes in handy to show you how simple it is to get those two files. Now, I'm going to put them on a server that has a blank USB drive. You might have an SD card or SATA DOM or M.2, who knows what. You may not have the same hardware, but this video is intended for folks who have this hardware, a Xeon D-1500 that's on the VMware compatibility list for 6.5, and we're going to see how it works with 6.7 tonight. We'll probably still have to add some drivers, but we'll get into that. The BIOS is already set up like this. My article covers that. It's recommended BIOS settings for this system. So it's a UEFI modern machine. Your experience with installing ESXi may vary. Okay. Now I'm not going to use Java because I don't need to. I'm going to use the HTML5 interface that comes to me with IPMI 3.58. I'm also using what's called, here we go, let's scroll down a little bit, the latest BIOS 1.3, right there. So 1.3 is the BIOS that's on the system. Okay, so how am I going to get drive mounted? If we look through these menus with the IPMI HTML5 version, there is no way to mount an ISO. So instead of going through Java and mounting ISO, I want to show you that you don't have to. So I'm going to set up a network share, and this article tells you exactly how to do that. So first, I'm going to go ahead and create a folder that I'm going to share out. Okay, I have Explorer open, and I'm at the root of my C drive, and I'm going to go ahead and click on a blank area and say New Folder. And why not just follow along with my video and screenshots on the right. Great. Now I need to move the files I downloaded into that directory. And they're on my clipboard. They're actually in a network share. I want them local anyway, right? So I'm going to simply paste them. And now you'll see the two ISOs that I downloaded earlier today. And you'll see the file size and all that matches my article that talks about them. All right, next. I'm trying to move this thing along here a bit. I'm going to select this folder, right-click it, say Properties, go to Sharing, and then look for the Share button. And next, I'm just going to click Share. Done. So it's this current user. And that's it. So this is going to be my network share mount point. I'm going to put that in my clipboard here. Logging into the IPMI interface. All right, I'm going to go to Virtual Media and select CD-ROM image. Okay, so that's not actually in IKVM. That's over here. Okay, and notice it says go to CD-ROM image. All right, great. Share host. Notice I've got a screenshot here. Full path to the ISOs. That's easy. So back in Explorer at the top here, you've got the full path. So if you just navigate into that path, and you can actually do a start run dialog, Windows plus R, clear out whatever's in there, and actually you can drag a complicated long path and file name right in there. Put it in the clipboard, and now I'm ready to paste it right here. Okay. Next, user. And password. So notice right here, do I talk about that? Username of the system where the network share resides, and the password of the system. All right. path does not meet the expected pattern. That is because it's supposed to be // right? Let's see. /ISOs. Yes. So it's on Win Multiboot, and it's not the C drive, of course. It's a network share. Silly me. So that wasn't the best way to construct it. Sorry about that. And you can tell it's been a little while since I've actually used my own document here. All right. So when I'm done filling out the dialogues, I forgot to actually tell you to click the Save button and the Mount button. Let's go ahead and do that. It's been set, and mount. All right. Check the status to see if it's mounted, and it says there's an ISO file mounted. So it's good. So I'm ready to head on back to HTML5 and power on the machine. So what we should see is a virtual CD-ROM that's available over the network to boot from. And that's this way we avoided lifting a finger or physically going over the box. You could even do this maybe even over a VPN. Probably not the most advisable. It could be pretty slow because you're actually booting from this ISO over a network. Okay, notice my directions warn you to get ready with the F11 key. Now you may want to use a virtual keyboard that's going to be more robust because you don't know if there's a combined function key on whatever system you're on. So F11 from here is a good way to go. And I'm going to start poking at it now, and it says invoking boot menu in the bottom left corner. So you already saw I succeeded. I don't know if you spotted that. Bottom left corner, it said invoking boot menu. That is a good sign. All right. Now from here, we really can use just the keyboard and go up and down. So A10 virtual CD-ROM is what we want to boot from. That's the network share that we mounted earlier. And now it's pulling bits over the wire, and we got ourselves an automatic boot from the ESXi standard installer. Now we want to make it look pretty, so I'm going to crank up the image quality to the top, and we should have a nice crystal clear screen watching ESXi load. So we're in really good shape now. It's booting, it's loading into RAM. And we're actually going to install ESXi onto a USB drive that's physically inserted in the machine that actually has nothing on it. Okay, so that's this particular install. There's many places you can install, but if you're small, non-vSAN, small memory environment, relatively, less than half a terabyte of RAM, yeah, you can do this. Even with vSAN, as long as you're under half a terabyte of RAM, that was the previous rule. Either way, in a home lab, USB is awfully convenient because you can just pop it out and put a different OS in there. And that's what I've done tonight. I've set aside my 6.5 update 1, and I've stuck in a new USB media, so I'm trying 6.7 absolutely risk-free. I'm not going to be formatting any VMFS file systems, not going to be losing any data or any VMs. I'm just doing a fresh install of ESXi 6.7, and then seeing how we do with the default baked-in drivers for things like RPMs and temperature, things like 10 gig networking, and even the i350-based 1 gig networking that comes with Xeon D systems. All of that's baked right in the motherboard. Let's see what else I would want to test. HCI, NVMe, all that support should be just fine, as is with pretty much any brand of devices. It might not be a top performer. Just so happens with Samsung, it performs just fine with the default NVMe drivers. For Intel and Micron and others, you may need to look into some sort of ESXi driver you need to add to get optimal speed from your NVMe devices for optimal performance, especially when it comes to Optane. All right, I could show you a bit of networking performance if we can actually see much of anything going on. So if we look at Ethernet here, long since past where it mounted the ISO and pulled it over the network, but even that is not very bandwidth intensive. Well, actually, it might still be hitting the ISO over the network at this point. So when you do mount an ISO or a network share this way, you're using Samba, or known as CIFS, whatever you want to call the network file sharing that Windows has had for years, where Linux variants have a compatible mode. The A10 feature, the IKVM out-of-band management of the SuperServer, it's not the fastest for this protocol. So I will admit, if you boot ESXi off of a bootable ISO media you made with something like Rufus freeware, you point an ISO and say, here's my USB, make it bootable with this ISO. If you do that, you will have a faster experience just for this initial install setup. The end result will be exactly the same. ESXi doesn't really care at all what you boot from. Once it's loaded, your VM performance will be the same regardless. All right, finally, we are booted, ready to hit enter. Let's get that mouse out of the way and just walk through a normal install. Okay, scanning for devices. I'll emphasize that this is the first time I'm using this particular code, by the way, but I don't think will be any big surprises. It sees my SanDisk UltraFit. Excellent. And because I'm in UEFI mode, not dual mode, which could be annoying, you'd see a whole bunch of like non-UEFI and UEFI USB devices. Yet another reason to put your machine in UEFI mode. And you'll also see several SSDs there. Keyboard US. Okay, concentrating, making sure caps lock was off. I have an on-screen display that tells me if it was. All right, now I hit F11 and ladder rep. Okay, that was very fast. Now it's telling me to remove the media before rebooting. What does that mean? Well, remember we're doing IPMI? We've got a thing mounted here. So we just hit unmount. And right here, the display for device 1, it changed over and tells me it's no longer mounted. Now I hit reboot. And it's going to do a soft reboot. And we wait for the system to come up. You may need to alter your boot sequence if it's not already set to boot off of your USB device before others. Like if you have a Windows NTFS that's bootable or something, it might grab that drive and boot it first. So be aware, your BIOS boot order is important. That's been true for decades on PCs. All right, I'm going to speed up this section until we are further along. Okay, I'm up. This machine already has a host name because my DHCP server is used to this MAC address requesting an IP address, and it gives it a name. So that's about as easy as it can be. You may have some tweaking to do of your name or IP address if you don't like what your DHCP server gave you. All right. So one thing we can do is a quick test of ESXi once it's up. Just do a little network check. So the local user interface, there's not a whole lot in it if you're not familiar. But there are some basic tests. Like if we go to configure network, we can see each of the network adapters. We're about to find out if all 4 are visible. Nice. So the baked-in driver for the first time ever actually sees the 10 gig interfaces. So right there is progress. And well, all 4 are showing connected. So that's good. That's a step forward. 6.7 finally has the Intel Xeon X557 chipset driver. One that works anyway. The old one was too old and back level to work. All right, so networking looks like we're good as is. What else would we try over in networking? How about I escape from here, because I already mentioned IP configuration's all been done here. And I'm going to do a test management network. Is the network up? Is it pinging the gateway? And in my case, the answer is yes. And it resolved my name to IP. By the way, it's out of scope for this video to cover all the consumer routers out there, but I have a Ubiquiti router worth around $100, and I have something called a static IP mapping where I say this MAC address, that's machine we're looking at, each 0 on the left, always gets this IP address and this name. So that's why it was so simple and straightforward. All right, so next, we're done there. Just hit escape. And now it's time for logging in for the very first time to this new ESXi that we just stood up, this new host, this new server or node or whatever you want to call it. All right, it's got this name, that's IPMI. I clicked the wrong thing. Let's try that again. Make that bigger. All right, here we go. This is the host we want. We're going to have certificate warnings. Once we get VCSA installed, we can actually fix that. And I happen to have auto login set because the LastPass is plugged in here. Let me move on. I'm going to click OK. And here we are in my home lab, my very first time booted on build 816-9922. You'll see I have lots of RAM, memory, storage. CPU is doing almost nothing. Things are looking good. So remember I told you earlier I want to check networking. We already saw that from the kind of pseudo GUI. If we look at physical NICs here, we'll see things are looking great. All right. How about the other thing I said we're going to look at? Temperatures and so forth. So we've got memory showing up, we got RPM showing correct, and we've got volts showing correct. Awesome. That negates the need for me to use an old article. This article, no longer needed. We had to do kind of a wonky workaround. Support, I think even documented support ticket said, oh yeah, we'll have that fixed in the next release. You won't have to do this. And sure enough, tonight we just got to witness together that it's no longer needed. Everything's accurate with the Supermicro. So I am really surprised. The install now is just as easy on the brand as on the brand new Xeon D-1541 that I'll be testing out soon, which is a new chipset that is said to work fine with ESXi 6.5, so it's probably going to work fine with 6.7. But even better, here we are with the roughly 2-year-old, very popular system, Xeon D-1541, 8-core. That's working just great. Okay, so one of the first things I've been doing for years, before I forget, is to set up NTP. And I'm also going to make it so we can get in via SSH. So let's do SSH first, because I'm still working on the system, still likely to poke around. Not a good idea anywhere that's not a lab, right? But in this situation, in a home lab, private network, not as big a deal. Still not suggested you leave it on. So if we have a look here under Manage and Auto Start, I also don't like some of the VM settings. All right, I'm going to head over to Services and look for SSH. Actions. Start and stop with host. It says completed successfully. Now I want to hit refresh so I can see that it actually started as well. And it says running. So we're all done with SSH. Now I can actually fire up PuTTY. I've got PuTTY running over here in the second window. I say yes to the usual security question. I'm going to go ahead and log in with the password that we set earlier during the install. Now we can do things like uname A and see the build of the way the operating system looks, the build version. There's other commands actually that show you that as well. All right, now I'm ready to head over to date and time, because remember I mentioned NTP earlier. Edit those settings and paste in the server names. VMware uses this NTP host, this set of NTP servers in vRealize login site. So I'm going to go ahead and paste those in. So there's a set of known servers that you can point to. You may do something different. Now I also want to say, let's do NTP service policy, start and stop with host. And then finally, I could have started earlier, but let's start it now. We have all the settings set, so it's a great time to manually start the NTP service. And now clock setting should start and be automatic. I'll point out the BIOS looks like the machine's 5 hours ahead because I'm Eastern time zone, but when you set NTP on, everything's fine. And it's using the system that you're on for the time. So notice the date and time actually looked like it was correct already at the bottom there. All right, so auto start configuration. I'm going to set that later from vSphere once I have, VCSA appliance installed. So I'm not going to worry about that just yet. Now there are a number of things I do to configure my system after VCSA is already installed. That's going to need to be in a future video. You may want to clean up and turn off network sharing on that ISOs folder. Not a great idea to leave those open when you don't need them, especially if you're on a shared network with other people. And that's the wrong menu. Let's go to advanced sharing, and then you can hit stop. Let's see. Turn off the checkbox. We'll do it. Click OK. And it warns you. And now you're disconnecting anyone that's connected to that share. Be on the lookout for future videos with a little more detail. There'll be things like syslogging and other fine-tuning. Thanks for visiting TinkerTry IT at Home, and thanks for watching this video. Please consider leaving a thumbs up or subscribing to the YouTube channel.